Since the letter from Kelsey Plum and Breanna Stewart was leaked to the press, the WNBPA has been on damage control for the past 48 hours. The damage control that they are doing is proving their guilt more than it is proving their innocence.
The relationship between the WNBA front office and the Players Association has reached a level of public friction rarely seen in professional sports negotiations. While high-stakes labor disputes typically maintain a facade of solidarity, the current state of the union suggests significant internal instability. A leaked letter from Kelsey Plum and Breanna Stewart has exposed deep divisions, challenging the traditional united front expected during collective bargaining. The union leadership has spent the last 48 hours in an intensive damage control effort. Executive Director Terry Carmichael Jackson has appeared across multiple media outlets, including ESPN and Front Office Sports, to project a sense of organizational unity. However, these appearances follow a 3-page letter from the league's most prominent stars criticizing the union's performance and transparency. The frequency of these media engagements suggests an urgent attempt to manage a narrative of internal rebellion. In the letter, Plum and Stewart accused union leadership of being disconnected from the membership and keeping players uninformed. The source of the leak remains a subject of intense speculation within the league. Reports indicate that the document did not originate from the camps of Plum, Stewart, or Nafisa Collier. This has led to theories of internal sabotage, suggesting a faction within the union may have released the document to frame these superstars as the source of the discord. Such a move indicates that trust within the organization has significantly eroded. Questions are also being raised regarding the data used by the union to justify its negotiating position. There are allegations of push polling, where players were reportedly asked leading questions designed to produce specific, aggressive outcomes. Some reports suggest the union has not shared the most recent offers from the league with the general membership, instead surveying players based on outdated figures to secure a headline-ready 84% strike authorization. This strategy places the league's middle-class players, those without major endorsement deals, at the greatest financial risk. Charles Barkley has cautioned the union against overestimating its leverage. Having experienced multiple NBA strikes, Barkley noted that owners possess the capital to withstand a lost season, while players generally do not. In 2026, the stakes are particularly high for the WNBA. With the World Cup coming to North America and a resurgence in Major League Baseball, a work stoppage would mean ceding primetime exposure and momentum during a critical period of growth. Ownership appears prepared to wait, observing the union's internal struggles from a position of financial security. This instability has created a logistical crisis for team general managers. Building a roster for the upcoming season is currently impossible without clarity on roster sizes or salary constraints. Expansion teams in Toronto and Portland remain in a state of limbo, unable to scout or plan effectively without established expansion draft rules. According to one general manager, the logistical deadline for 2026 preparations has already passed, leaving the league in a state of operational paralysis. While there is broad support for increased player compensation and revenue sharing, the current internal fracturing may prove counterproductive. The combination of public infighting and questionable polling tactics could embolden owners to wait for a union collapse rather than offering concessions. Without a swift resolution to these internal disputes, the WNBA's projected golden era faces a significant threat before the 2026 season even begins. The economic tension is anchored in the disconnect between the league's recent 11-year, $2 billion media rights deal and the current salary cap. Under the previous collective bargaining agreement, the league's growth was theoretical. Now the numbers are concrete. Players are observing a massive influx of capital from partners like Disney, NBC Universal, and Amazon, yet the actual distribution of that wealth remains a point of intense litigation. The union's primary argument is that the current revenue-sharing model was built for a league in survival mode, not one commanding primetime television slots and sellout crowds. However, the owners argue that the increased revenue is being immediately reinvested into charter flights, improved practice facilities, and the massive overhead required to scale the league's infrastructure. This creates a fundamental disagreement over what constitutes profit versus necessary reinvestment, a distinction that could delay a deal for months. The logistical vacuum created by this stalemate is most visible in the expansion markets of Toronto and Portland. These franchises were intended to be the centerpieces of the league's 2026 growth strategy, but they are currently operating in a regulatory void. Without a confirmed collective bargaining agreement, these teams cannot hire coaching staffs with any certainty regarding salary pools, nor can they finalize lease agreements for practice facilities that meet the new, yet-to-be-defined league standards. In Toronto, the challenges are compounded by cross-border labor laws and tax implications that remain unresolved. While lack of an expansion draft framework means these front offices are scouting players they may not even be eligible to sign. This forced inertia is costing these new owners millions in potential sponsorship revenue, as brands are hesitant to commit to a product that does not yet have a functional roster or a guaranteed start date. This administrative paralysis extends to the league's middle class, the veteran players who fill out the 6th through 10th spots on a roster. While superstars like Plum and Stewart have the financial cushion of high-value endorsements and global branding, the average WNBA player relies almost exclusively on their league salary and the standard housing stipend. For these athletes, the prospect of a strike is not a strategic maneuver, but a direct threat to their livelihood. Reports from within the union indicate a growing resentment among these rank-and-file members who feel their financial security is being used as a bargaining chip by high-earning stars who can afford to miss a season. This wealth gap within the union itself is a vulnerability the league owners are likely to exploit. If the owners can present a deal that significantly raises the minimum and middle-tier salaries while keeping the top-end supermax contracts capped, they could effectively split the union's voting bloc. The role of Commissioner Kathy Engelbert has become increasingly scrutinized as she navigates the demands of two distinct groups of owners. On one side is the old guard, owners who have carried the league through decades of financial losses and are now looking to recoup those investments. On the other side is the new money cohort, owners like Joe Tsai and Matt Ishbia, who have shown a willingness to spend aggressively to accelerate growth. The new money owners view a work stoppage as catastrophic for the brand's momentum, while the old guard may see it as a necessary correction to keep player costs from spiraling. Engelbert's challenge is to find a middle ground that satisfies the fiscal conservatism of the long-term owners while meeting the ambitious growth targets set by the newcomers. The current silence from the league office suggests a struggle to find that internal consensus, leaving the commissioner in a position where any public statement risks alienating a key faction of her board of governors. Compounding these internal issues is the shifting landscape of international basketball. For decades, WNBA players supplemented their income by playing in Russia, Turkey, and China during the winter months. However, geopolitical instability and the tragic detention of Brittany Griner in 2022 fundamentally altered that economy, while new opportunities have emerged in Western Europe and through domestic initiatives like Athletes Unlimited and Unrivaled. These do not yet offer the same scale of compensation that the old overseas markets provided. If the 2026 WNBA season is canceled or significantly shortened, players lose their primary source of income with fewer high-paying international alternatives than they had 5 years ago. This economic reality gives the owners a significant wait-and-out advantage, as the players' collective strike fund is reportedly insufficient to cover more than a few months of lost wages. The technicalities of the revenue trigger are another major hurdle in the negotiations. The union is pushing for a gross revenue split, similar to the models used in the NBA and NFL, where players receive a fixed percentage of all league income, including ticket sales, jersey revenue, and local TV deals. The league, conversely, is advocating for a net revenue model, which would subtract operating expenses before the players get their share. Given the massive costs associated with the 2026 expansion and the upgrading of league-wide facilities, a net revenue model would likely result in significantly lower payouts for the players in the short term. The union views this as a shell game designed to hide profits behind creative accounting, while the league insists it is the only way to ensure the long-term sustainability of the franchises. The public perception of the league is also at risk. The 2024 and 2025 seasons saw a historic surge in viewership, largely driven by a new generation of stars and a massive increase in media coverage. However, sports history is filled with examples of leagues that lost their cultural momentum due to labor disputes. The 1994 Major League Baseball strike and the 2004-2005 NHL lockout both resulted in significant long-term declines in fan engagement and trust. In 2026, the WNBA is competing for attention in an increasingly crowded media environment. If the league goes dark while the World Cup is being hosted in North America, they risk losing the casual fans who only recently started following the sport. Advertisers who have just begun to invest heavily in the WNBA may pivot their budgets toward the NWSL or other rising women's sports properties that offer more stability. Inside the locker rooms, the tension is reportedly affecting player relationships. The WNBA is a small, insubordinate league where everyone is connected. When stars like Plum and Stewart are accused of breaking rank, it creates personal friction that can spill over onto the court. There are reports of heated conference calls where younger players have questioned the union's transparency, demanding to see the full text of the league's proposals rather than the summarized talking points provided by union leadership. Already, this demand for radical transparency is a departure from the traditional top-down structure of labor unions and suggests that the younger generation of players is less willing to follow leadership blindly. The Billionaire Wall described by Charles Barkley is reinforced by the league's current legal posture. Sources close to the negotiations suggest that the league has already prepared for the possibility of a lockout rather than a strike. Already, in a lockout, the owners proactively shut down operations, which can sometimes provide them with more legal leverage in antitrust proceedings. The league's legal team has been bolstered by top-tier labor attorneys who specialized in the most recent NBA and NFL lockouts, indicating that they are preparing for a long-term conflict. The union, meanwhile, is relying on a mix of veteran labor leaders and outside consultants who are trying to maintain a cohesive strategy despite the public leaks and internal disagreements. The expansion draft, originally scheduled for late 2025, remains the most immediate casualty of this stalemate. The draft was supposed to be the moment Toronto and Portland officially joined the league's competitive landscape. Without it, these teams cannot participate in the free agency period, which is also on indefinite hold. This has created a frozen market where hundreds of players are technically unemployed, unable to sign new contracts or negotiate extensions. For players coming off rookie deals or those on the bubble of making a roster, this uncertainty is professionally devastating. They are unable to plan their lives, relocate to new cities, or secure the medical insurance that comes with a signed contract. In the front offices of established teams, the frustration is equally high. General managers are trying to manage cap gymnastics without knowing what the cap will be. Many teams have shadow rosters built for multiple scenarios, one where the cap remains flat and another where it jumps by 30%. The inability to communicate clearly with players about their futures is damaging the trust between front offices and their athletes. One executive noted that the current environment has turned every conversation into a negotiation, destroying the collaborative culture that many teams have spent years building. The influence of the NBA cannot be ignored in this equation. As the WNBA's primary backer, the NBA has a vested interest in the league's success, but they also have their own labor precedents to protect. NBA leadership is reportedly advising the WNBA owners to stand firm on certain system issues, such as the revenue-sharing structure, to avoid creating a precedent that could be used against the NBA in their own future negotiations. This means the WNBA players are not just negotiating against their own owners, but against the collective weight of the broader professional sports establishment. As the drop-dead date for the 2026 season approaches, the pressure on the union's executive committee is reaching a breaking point. The frantic press tour by Terry Carmichael Jackson is seen by many as a last-ditch effort to keep the membership from revolting. If a significant group of players led by another set of superstars decides to publicly challenge the union's strategy, the leadership could be forced to resign or accept a deal they have previously labeled as unacceptable. The next few weeks will determine if the WNBA can capitalize on its unprecedented growth, or if it will become a cautionary tale of how internal division can derail a golden era. The situation is further complicated by the hardline stance taken by a group of owners who believe the union is overplaying the Caitlin Clark effect. While the 2024 draft class brought in record numbers, these owners argue that the long-term sustainability of the league cannot be built on a single spike in interest. They are pushing for a deal that accounts for the possibility of a market correction, where viewership might stabilize or even dip slightly after the initial novelty wears off. The union conversely believes the growth is permanent and that the players should be compensated for the new floor of the league's popularity, not the old ceiling. Ultimately, the conflict is about more than just money. It is about the professionalization of the league. The players are demanding a standard of travel, healthcare, and post-career support that matches the top-tier men's leagues. They want an end to the resource scarcity mindset that has defined the WNBA for 3 decades. The owners, while agreeing with the sentiment, are arguing about the timeline for these changes. What is Homet Pletion Subly Kamchik Fords to pose, Prodizikla Cole, Korean? This expectations gap is the silent engine behind every leaked letter, every dirty poll, and every tense meeting in the league's New York headquarters. The clock is not just a metaphor for the start of the season, it represents the expiration of the league's most valuable asset, its cultural relevance. In the modern attention economy, going dark is a form of brand suicide. The owners know it, the players know it, and the sponsors certainly know it. The question that remains is who will blink first: the union leadership trying to maintain their credibility, the superstars trying to secure their legacy, or the owners trying to protect their bottom line. Until someone does, the WNBA remains a house of cards in a very high-wind environment.